All right, whoever you are that just hit play, here we are. This is Jay Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is Jay Brown, and whether this is your first time listening or you're a returning friend, I so appreciate that you would take it upon yourself to listen. Thank you. And I do often wonder about who you are. The person that is listening to this right now. And why? Why would you choose to give your attention here? And I can only imagine that it's because yoga has meant something to you at some time or another. Enough that you would care to hear me ramble on or talk to other people about it or reminisce about other times when we used to go to yoga classes in different contexts than we do now. And if you've been around of late, you know, I've been discussing what possible models for success do yoga centers have. So last week we were talking about the future of yoga being in the boutique fitness model, which I know I think was disheartening to some of us. And then to others, you know, maybe that's just the evolution of things. But to some of us, the idea that you can't make it with just a yoga center anymore, and you got to sell people on a whole bunch of different things, and then the yoga is maybe a little bit disappointing. But I do not think that is the only future. And we will be discussing another model today, which I will tell you about shortly. But I have also mentioned to regular listeners, you'll know this, that I got this gig teaching at a juvenile detention center. And I mentioned last week that my first classes were this last week and that I would share about it. And I did teach those classes and it went quite well. It was pretty amazing. It's a really different thing to teach at a juvenile detention center than it would be at like a boutique fitness center. And you know, I have maybe more to say about that gig. Maybe I'll save it to the other side. If you want to hear more about my experience teaching at the detention center, you can tune in to the other side of today's conversation. But I would say that it certainly seems to me that there is some kind of new evolution of sorts happening of where yoga is landing after the chaos of the last few years. And, you know, where things are settling in terms of like different approaches in yoga and like different schools and systems. I think in the past, there used to be more camps that people were in, and sometimes at odds with one another. And it seems like a lot of those lines have blurred some. And yet there's still like a deep hunger for something authentic and that has like tradition to it. And that was what I was discussing some weeks back when I had Mariela Cruz on, and she was talking about some things that she was upset about in the Ashtanga world since Sharath's passing. And I put out a call at the end of that episode that if there was anyone else who wanted to come on and express some other views, that I thought that it would be good to have other perspectives shared. And I've spoken to a number of different people. Some of folks want to wait for a while, understandably so, but I did have one taker, and that is my guest today, Aimee Echo. And I won't say too much more because we go through Aimee's history with the Ashtanga school. And we also get into some other things because she has a former life as a musician in Los Angeles, and that's where I grew up. And we had kind of parallel lives in the 90s in the local art, music, yoga scenes of New York and Los Angeles that happened in parallel. So we spend a little time kind of reminiscing about days of old, but then we do get into what happened recently and some of the controversies. And I feel like Aimee brought some important perspectives. So I was super happy to connect with her, and it is my pleasure to be sharing it with you today. Real quick before we get to it, let me mention a few things. First, I think there's still a few days left maybe to get in on 50% off any of my on-demand videos. You can use promo code MAY50 to get 50% off my online workshop, Gentle is the New Advanced, or my continuing education course, the yoga modules, or my self-practice videos. You could get 50% off until the end of May using promo code MAY50. Also, I'm going to be at the Berkshire Yoga Festival in 2 weeks, I think it is. If you're going to be at the festival, come check me out. I think they just added another session on Sunday. So if you were already signed up and you saw that my other one was full, there's going to be another one, I think. So come say hi if you're going to be at that. Otherwise, maybe you would want to show some support and get access to the full-length archives of the show with a podcast premium subscription, or connect with me in other ways through my ongoing live classes or a weekly discussion group or the teacher training. All of the stuff can be found at jbrownyoga.com. Okay, y'all, I'm going to leave it there. I will touch base with you on the other side, but let's go ahead and get to it. Let's listen to this conversation that I had with Aimee Echo. Hello?
Hello.
Hello, Aimee.
Hi, Jay.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I am already recording, so please, let's consider ourselves having just begun, okay?
All right. I love it.
Well, I often say this these days, but it's exceptionally true right now that I'm glad to have this moment to speak with you. I want to share with you that a funny thing happened while I was getting ready to talk to you, because as I mentioned in my email to you, there are some things that I'm like focused on in me and with the show, and I'm sort of like less interested in these conversations around, well, what makes you authorized or what makes you certified or,
Yeah.
but that was sort of what brought us together some, because I had that episode with Mariella, and I did think that there was some questions to ask there that are beyond just the Ashtanga world and more like what qualifies someone to be a yoga teacher and what kind of training we're doing. So
yeah, absolutely.
Those were the initial things that were bringing us together, and we'll definitely get to those things today. But when I was getting ready to speak with you, I did listen to a couple other podcasts that you did and like listen to your story and stuff.
Uh-oh.
No, it's not an uh-oh. It's more like an aha, in the sense that our lives have played out in some parallel, I think.
Oh, really?
In a very kind of wild way for me, because I grew up in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. I spent all my summers at Malibu and Zuma Beach. I moved to New York in 1990 and was playing electric bass in a band when I got into yoga.
Aha.
And I started at Jiva Mukti, on Second Avenue. And you were sort of like just on the other side of the country. And also for me, what it brought back, and I have talked about this on the show is that there was a particular time, and I think of it as this golden time, and people who listen to the show are probably annoyed by me always reminiscing about it, but there was a time where there was like these really thriving art scenes in both West Los Angeles and in New York. Like in the 90s, being in a band and doing like performance art and getting into yoga, it was a world that was all it was a ripe area for people to be getting into yoga. And it seems like that was true for you as well.
Yeah, it really felt like yoga was sort of subversive. It wasn't mainstream in any way, shape, or form.
No, it was punk rock.
It was totally punk rock. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and you had to, I mean, it was fringe. It was super fringe.
Right.
And I guess, I ended up, call it grace, I guess. My first experience with yoga outside of Lilius on the television set, which everybody remembers Lilius, right?
Not everybody, but you and me do.
I ended up in a traditional Ashtanga school from class 1. And I didn't realize that there was other yoga even, because there really wasn't a lot of other yoga at that time.
No.
So yeah, and the crew that was in that space, so it was Noah Williams and Kimberly Flynn, Kiki Flynn's school, was really, interesting and artistic and, all of this really wild group of characters in this tiny, tiny linoleum filled space, that only held comfortably 15, and they put, 18 in there, which is a totally different,
mat to mat.
Right.
Mat to mat.
Yeah. And smelly and facing each other and drippy. I would wring out my clothes at the end because it was so tight and hot. Mm-hmm. It was crazy.
Right. And I always say that was like just before the wave really picked up steam, that like it started out like that. And then at some point, I remember it was like Jiva Mukti was the same thing, although there was more than 15 people in that room, or 18 people, but it was not more than, say, 30, I'd say, or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like Madonna and Sting were in class.
Yeah.
And we were like, what? Like there was like rock stars in class.
Yeah, I have to say at day one, there were rock stars in the class that I attended, which was wild because, I was waiting to put out a record. And so I was keeping odd hours. Surprise. Mm-hmm. Not yoga odd hours, which are a different kind of odd hour, but rock and roll odd hours.
For people listening, they might not know anything about you. I didn't before I got ready to talk to you. What were the names? What band were you in at that time when you were?
So at that time, I was in a band called The Start, and we were on Geffen Records subsidiary at that point. Mm-hmm. And we were waiting for our record to come out. I had been in a band previously that was on a different record label, and we toured all over and we made one record. And
what was the name of that band? I feel like I remember that band more.
It's such a fun name. Human Waste Project.
Yes. Yes, because the band I was in was really into like boredoms and all this like crazy stuff. And I remember hearing your band.
Oh, awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty rough and tumble and heavy. And it was an interesting time. The 90s, we can wax romantic about it. Actually, right. It was amazing. Come on now.
It was if we were there and you got in at the right time, maybe. Go ahead. It was pre-internet though.
Yes. And I think that was sort of the last, because internet has really shifted and changed all of our lives so much.
It's true. But I feel like what struck me when I was listening to you earlier was, she was in the scene in LA, because there was like this vibrant, like downtown music scene in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
And absolutely. There was just like I guess I had an apartment for $400 a month in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and you could be an artist there,
Yeah. Yeah. And, same. I'm not 400, but I had an apartment in East Hollywood, Los Feliz area for $700 a month.
Exactly. See?
Perfect. Beautiful little Spanish two bedroom for $700 a month.
Yeah. And so your first classes were at the Ashtanga room, and there was celebs already there. It had already happened where like people started spotting that. And it was just starting to get in the news, like Sting dropped it in an interview or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. And then Madonna, of course. Yeah.
And then soon they would sell out. You couldn't get into class at 6 p.m. anymore. You had to pre-register.
Well, Ashtanga was always sort of still really niche and still really, I guess it felt like a subculture even to the yoga studios at the time.
It's true because there was a certain barrier of entry. And, actually, we'll come to that later because I know you have a space that you have right now.
Yeah, I do.
And I was on your site and looking at like the protocols, and you're so old school. I was like grinning because I opened a place like 7 months ago, and I literally have like a cigar box, and it's like $15 per student per class. You know what I mean? Like I went old school, not in the same way as you, but very interesting. And the point being that at that time, and I have said this before, the reason I never got into Ashtanga is because you had to show up early 6 days a week, except for moon days.
Yeah.
It was like a pretty hard, you had to really want it.
Yeah. And you had to have space and capacity in your life for it, really is what it's about. Funnily, I also considered going back to a cigar box last week. Like, these admin systems are driving me crazy. Yes. Give me just a box. Throw your money in. I don't care.
Yes, that's funny that you say that because that's part of the reason. I did just decide to offer a class card, but I'm doing a punch card.
Yeah.
They're just paper punch cards. We could talk about that more, but the reason why we want to do that is because when we came to yoga, the business part of it hadn't colored it so much yet,
Yeah. I mean, so my first experience with Noah Williams, I came into the room. It was terrifying. I had taken, back in those days, there were a couple of lead class options that they were hosting at their school. There was an intro to Ashtanga and what would be called Ashtanga Prep, which was like a half primary series. And so I had taken a couple of those. And then there was this thing that happened in the morning that was from 7 a.m. till 1 p.m. 7 to 1. That's a lot of hours. And it just said Mysore. And I was like, well, that's not for me. So I understand what you're saying when you say barriers to entry. But I made my way into the room and I said, I would like to show up. And he looked at me very skeptically. And he said, okay, so it was $99 at this point. He said, it's going to be $150 cash. There are no refunds. You have to come 4 days a week. I prefer 6. And like the words yes were coming out of my mouth before I could control myself. And afterwards I was like, what have you done? Because at that point I was on, let's just drop all the money. I was on a stipend from my record label of $962 per month. Total. That's what I was making as income when I hit that school. So $150 was like a lot of money.
Good chunk. Yeah.
And so I said yes. And honestly, I didn't miss a day.
Okay, so what was that impulse? What happened leading up to that moment that was motivating you to say yes to what seemed like a pretty big commitment?
The very first class that I took, it interestingly felt very familiar to me, unlike home, but still awkward and challenging at the same time, and quiet. And then when I got to rest, I had this incredibly transcendent experience that I can't really explain to you. I was startled out of it. And I went home and my husband, who was my boyfriend then, says, oh, how was that yoga thing that you did? And I pretty much would have considered myself an atheist at the time. I said, I just saw God and I'm going back tomorrow.
The infamous Shavasana that changed it all.
Right.
It's a common refrain.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so that was, that dragon that I was chasing for a really long time was just this like way to have these experiences. And it was really accessible for me in that room right from the get-go. And then, I'm surrounded by these people that are doing sort of what seem like otherworldly things at that time. And it also, they also I called it rock and roll yoga because I could show up as late as 11 o'clock and still, do it. Which, as we were discussing in the beginning, I was keeping rock and roll hours. So 11 a.m.
So you were a late bird at the Mysore room rather than an early bird, huh?
Oh yeah, and all the cool kids were in that session. There was a lot of mostly musicians were in that.
Well, yeah,
session.
You were up late. It's funny you say that because there was a time where, for a while, when someone asked me what I do, I would say I'm a bass player and a yoga teacher. Yeah. And at one point, I switched it. And it became yoga teacher and bass player. And the moment when that happened was it was like a Wednesday night and we were playing a show in the Lower East Side really late and no one came. We played for the sound guy and I had to lug my rig back home at 2:30 in the morning and I had a class to teach at 7:30 in the morning. And I was like, that's it. You know what I mean? There was a moment where, I don't know, yoga just started to seem cooler. I felt more at home there, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Did that happen, or how much was the overlap of you being a rock star and touring and teaching? Was there some point where those things became in conflict?
They didn't come into conflict. So I didn't teach for the first 5 years. I just practiced because I was doing music and making records, touring. So I didn't really have a lot of time, but I was definitely dedicated. I was there. If I was home, I was there. And then in 2002, Patabhi Jois and his family, Sharath and Shruthi, all came to LA, and Noah and Kimberly hosted them at the Roosevelt Hotel. And I took my mom. It was her first yoga class.
What? You took your mom to her first yoga class? To the mega Patabhi Jois tour?
My mom's first yoga class was a week with Patabhi Jois primary series, led primary.
Wow.
I know. She's such a badass.
Did she enjoy it?
Oh my God, she loved it. She thought it was the best thing in the entire universe. And Madonna was there.
Yes.
Of course.
Well, for people listening who are East Coast, I guess that's the West Coast equivalent of the Puck Building gigs in New York, where there was he went on tour and there was these big rooms of people, hundreds of people.
Yeah, a couple hundred, I think, at that visit. Yeah.
But you had already been practicing Ashtanga for some time before.
Yeah, at that point, I had 2 years under my belt, which now seems not like good morning. But I had a solid primary series, so it wasn't. It was really challenging. The hardest part was in our school, we didn't have lead class really until they knew they were hosting Patabhi Jois. Then they started with a regular Sunday lead class that they would do.
And why was that? Was that to make sure everybody was up to speed before Patabhi got there?
Yeah, I think so.
They wanted to look good for Patabhi, I'm sure.
Well, I mean, historically, as I understand it, that was how lead class happened. Back in the old days, in the initial shala in Lakshmipuram in Mysore, there wasn't lead class. Everybody just practiced individually together, Mysore style. You don't say that when you're in Mysore.
No. Yeah.
So at a certain point, the legend goes that, a lot of people were coming that had learned from other teachers to sort of get everybody to figure out where everybody was and to start to refine the steps of the sequence. He said, okay, lead class, that's what we're going to do, and started to count it. That's the legend as I understand it. And so, it becomes really clear, you learn one pose at a time. So I learned everything one by one from Noah and Kimberly.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, because I think that's something I've asked before. It's one of the big things I did take from studying Ashtanga, even though I didn't stick with that specific set of forms, but the self-practice tradition, in the sense that you say you learn it and then you do it on your own and then your teacher observes and gives you help, that whole idea is something I took away from it. But when it was Mysore, the way I understand it, in the old days, you would show up and they would give you 10 minutes of the primary series to start with, and then come back again tomorrow, as opposed to a lead primary where you go through the whole primary series the first time you show up.
Yeah. So I didn't do a lead class for 2 years until Patabhi Jois was coming. So I learned my posture. I learned one by one by one. I got the first, the sun salutes, like a lot of sun salutes. Noah asked me to do 9 of Surya Namaskara A and 9 of Surya Namaskara B. Oh. And then the finishing. And then it was pretty much pose by pose by pose. I, as a student, now as a teacher, reflecting back, I was taught those poses fairly quickly, but it did take me some time within the postures to have some comfort and stability in them. But it was not, and he, Noah was very strict in the beginning. He said, he gave me a copy. I bought a copy of Yoga Mala, and he said, you take it home every night. You remember what I taught you? And I did. I was very serious. I don't know why or how, because I was totally punk rock. It was like this, all of a sudden, the structure, I was like, this is like the ultimate punk rock structure. I can do this. This is great, right?
It's interesting you say that, just to chime in to say that I feel like similarly that I was incredibly serious-minded about practice at a time when in other areas of my life, I was sort of undisciplined because I needed that. Like 100%. I needed something structured to follow like that and to 100%. Make myself have to do it even when I didn't want to.
It changed. It changed my life incredibly. I all of a sudden could tolerate, no offense, my bass player.
That's funny.
But really, I became a lot more bomb-proof. Things didn't, I was less sensitive to certain things and more sensitive to others. It was really a productive, helpful thing, having this as an anchor for my life. That was not anchored. Everything else was just, I was touring, I was swimming around. I had no idea what, from one day to the next, what was going to happen. So in 2002, I met the family. I asked Sharath that trip. I met Sharath. I met them all, but I asked Sharath, for some reason, I asked Sharath, maybe he's the easier one to talk to. I said, okay, so let me go back a little bit. I had this dream that I was learning from Patabhi Jois. It was weird. And I came to class the next day and I told Noah. And Noah said, oh, it's time for you to go to India. And I'm like, yeah, right. Only you people go to India. I'm not going to India.
Making the Mecca was a thing. Making the Mecca to India was a thing, totally.
So I met Sharath and I said, can I come to class? And he said, yeah, we're building this new shala, you come. And it took me 5 more years to get there. I didn't have a chunk of time in my schedule that I could make it. And so there was finally this little window. We were finishing one record and then we were going to go on tour. So I had this window of opportunity that was like 2 months long. And I, wrote the snail mail letter, sent it to the Institute. And that was January of 2007. Now, oddly, that this was the first year that there was in our entertainment speak, it was a sellout. The shala was so full that they stopped allowing.
How many people? They had to start doing seasons, right? And you had to kind of pre-register or something.
I had already sent my letter and I booked my tickets and I was on my way. And I had heard that they were considering turning people away. And so I was actually living in Orange County at this time. Noah and Kimberly had moved to Hawaii and I was practicing and I had started assisting under Diana Christensen down in South Orange County. And I said, Diana, I don't know what to do. What if I get there and I don't, what if I've come all this way and they turn me away? And she goes, call Sharath. And he's teaching in a small shala there after he teaches in the main shala. Call him and ask if you can be a student. So I picked up my phone and I called Sharath on his cell phone. Hi.
And he answered. You could get his cell number, right?
And I asked if I could come. And he said yes.
Nice.
And so then I showed up at the small shala. You get there, people talk, everybody talks and tells everybody where to go. I showed up there and this is actually, this will pertain to our conversation. It was not, I was in the very last batch because I just arrived, and it was sort of like whoever got there first, got the first spots, whoever got there last got the last ones. I showed up, and in that month that I spent with Sharath with very few people, in fact, in that, there was some times where it was just me and one more student. I got to watch him teach Surya Namaskara to a brand new student from scratch. And I was also in the room with his wife, Shruthi, and she was assisting him the entire time. So she was holding my foot up in Tita Hasta Paramvrishtasana, and his daughter, Shraddha, was maybe 4 or 5, and she was running around the room, and she was play adjusting the students. So she would come over and give me a little squish on the back. And so it was really, from my first trip, it was so much of a family affair.
Wow.
So I think in my experience, his wife, his daughter at that point, everybody was there. Everybody, it was really a family affair.
That's a very intimate practice experience.
Oh, yeah.
That's not 600 people in the room with Patabhi,
No. So on my next trip was my first experience. It was 2008, where I got to be, where I registered with Patabhi Jois, and it was Patabhi Jois teaching, Sharath teaching, Saraswati also teaching. So there was 3 teachers in the room, and it was usually 50, 55 students at that point. I again was in the later batch. So again, it was like sometimes 8 of us, just there. So yeah.
Your late bird nature working for you.
I know. It was very lucky for me.
All right. Well, what was your experience of Patabhi?
So on my first trip in 2007, I was in Sharath Shala, but all of the students of any of the family, so Sharath students could come over, and we were part of the school, so we could attend conference. And so that first trip, it was just conference that he would give after the lead classes, which were on Sunday at that point.
And when you say conference, is that like he talked about philosophy and stuff, or what was that?
Yeah. So after the lead classes were over, everybody would gather, all of the students would gather in the room at the same time, and there would be conversation that happened. Usually a topic would happen with Patabhi Jois. He would talk for some time, and often it was in Kannada, so you couldn't really understand what was going on. And then after some time, Sharath would say, he said.
Gotcha.
That was a cool trip, though. There was this young teenager named Milo, who was one of the students. His dad was a student of Noah and Kimberly as well. And he was in the Shali. He had blue hair, super cute, 17 years old. And he raised his hand. So after some topic, there would be a question and answer. And this kid raised his hand, and Patabhi Jois called on him, and he said, Guruji, can you speak on music? And he just said, music, meditation, same thing. That was it. That was the whole conversation.
Do you think the question was like music during practice?
No.
Or just in general?
This kid was a musician. He wanted to know. He wanted to know if music was God.
Yeah. If music could be his yoga, which it can. Yeah. Of course it could. Yeah.
And I went home to my tiny, tiny apartment that I had rented, and my husband had gone with me on that trip. And I said, you're not going to believe it. He said, music, meditation, same thing. He goes, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
My husband.
Yeah, but having breathing and moving practice does have its own special character and might be good too. But yes, the point is well made.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, so what did you have any like direct teaching experience or teacher-student experience with Patabhi? Did he ever come over and work with you, or did you have any interactions with him directly?
Not much. At that point, it was 2008 when I was in the room with him during asana classes. And my practice was pretty tidy, so I'm sure there wasn't much to fix or help with. And he was mostly watching at that point. Yeah. So my experience of him was lead classes and conference.
Okay, so were you already teaching before you were there in 2007 and 2008?
Yeah. So 2005, I decided that, I kind of ended up in a no man's land where there wasn't really much teaching happening. Noah and Kimberly had left and gone to Hawaii. I was sort of flitting around between tours and not really living anywhere. And so there was a space in my schedule that was like a certain amount of weeks long, and Yoga Works was offering a teacher training.
I see. But that was a golden time for Yoga Works, just like Jivamukti. Yeah.
So it was James Brown leading it. And
I've had James on the show. Very cool guy.
He's so great.
Yeah,
he was rooted in Ashtanga, and Catherine Monroe also. They were both rooted in Ashtanga. So for me, it was really just a place to have some yoga when I was home from tour, because where I was, there was no yoga. Other than Yoga Works. There was no Ashtanga. That's what I should say.
So that's interesting, because you get a taste, because there were people teaching Ashtanga who weren't going to Mysore or being authorized or doing that, like getting trained at Yoga Works and how to teach Ashtanga. Or did they train that, or they trained Yoga Works style?
They were teaching Yoga Works style, but they were rooted in Ashtanga, and their teachers were Chuck and Mati, and
they were incorporated. It was all incorporated into there. So that was, so right after I finished that, I think because I had been practicing for 5 years at that point, they recommended 2 people to teach out of that training group. It was myself and Mia Togo. I don't know if you know who she is. I know the name.
And they needed somebody to teach Ashtanga prep because it was on the schedule and there was no teachers.
What's Ashtanga prep?
That is the half primary.
Oh, the lead half series. Yeah.
Okay. So I started teaching lead half primary.
But would you have admitted that to anybody in Mysore?
Yeah, probably.
Was it frowned upon? Like, I guess that's my curiosity. Again,
no, I think what was frowned upon was running a Mysore room.
Oh, I see.
I don't think
they didn't see that as competition at all. Like, I get it.
I don't think it was problematic, and definitely it wasn't problematic since I had already had 5 years of practice and teaching and teachers.
Right.
I wasn't just learning the sequence off of the internet and then teaching it.
Yeah.
So it was, and I inherited it from a teacher who had just recently gone to India, and she was authorized. And that's why she was giving up the class, because she was going to open her Mysore room. And that was who I ended up assisting under for first. That was my first.
And that's an important point. Like, assisting someone was always part of the process, it seemed.
Yeah, definitely. And there was an understanding, there is an understanding that if you are authorized, that you can teach your assistants to teach in your school. It doesn't give them the authorization to open their own Mysore program, but you can train your students to assist you.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that before. That makes sense, because you do need assistants to be learning.
Yeah, and you need support.
But when you got to go to India, someone's got to cover for you, right?
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was sort of an umbrella authorization for your school, basically. And that didn't give anybody else authorization to do anything else, but it was understood that, in fact, when I got authorized in 2010, after that was my third trip.
Now, at that time, was there already an established, like, you have to come this many times before you get authorized?
Yeah. So when I first started studying with Noah and Kimberly, they were going to India regularly. And in the middle of my first year with them, Noah got certified to teach by Patabhi Jois. And
that's that means like the highest level, right?
That was when you got a paper. Okay. So so I was also a student of Tim Miller for some time. And he is the first certified he is the first official certified teacher because he asked for a paper. He said, Guruji, I'm teaching people at home and they're Americans and they don't believe, they want something to show them that shows them that I have this education. And so he made Tim do a demonstration. He had to do a demonstration in front of some kind of auditorium. I don't know what it was. But these have happened. I've seen a couple of them when I've been in India, where Sharath will have his students do a yoga demonstration in front of, like, at the Mysore Palace in front of people. One time we were at a hospital and he did it there. So Tim was made to do a demonstration, and apparently he did a demonstration of his advanced practice, or maybe just called out random. I don't know. I wasn't there. And then Tim's story is that Patabhi Jois went all the way, got this paper, got it notarized, and then handed him a paper that said, Tim Miller is certified to teach, as I've told him. You probably find that picture of his certificate somewhere online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But at that time, it was a blessing. I guess you could, it was like a verbal blessing for authorization. And then a couple of people were getting papers. And at that time, there was like a handful of people that had certification. And then other teachers had blessing to teach, authorization. So the teacher that I took over from, she was authorized to teach. And there was no paperwork. There was nothing. I actually found, cause I knew we were having this conversation, obviously. And I keep things.
And you had a
found,
box in the attic, eh?
No, it's actually in my phone, but I found a document that was from, there's some like contracts that or agreements, I guess, or contracts. There were these agreements that you would sign.
When you became authorized, you mean?
When you became authorized at a certain point. Yeah. And so up until about 2008, there was a verbal authorization and then there was certification. And the certification, I don't really know because I wasn't around back then, but it wasn't strict. But at a certain time, it became, I guess, formalized in the least formal way.
Well, I guess that's a question I have is like, it seems it was a totally subjective thing. You just showed up enough and practiced enough and were like diligent enough. And then at some point, maybe you asked.
No, so
or like Tim did, but or at some point you would just get the nod, or how'd it go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So Tim had already had the blessing to teach. He had already been told by Patabhi Jois to teach at that point. He asked for a letter, and that's sort of when certification became a thing. Gotcha, right. Up to that point, it was just teach as you were taught. And I'm telling you that you can. Right. And it was like at a certain point of proficiency or comfort or ease or calmness.
So it was about being able to execute the sequences, not just how many times you came.
Yes, definitely not just how many times you came. But at that point, people had been coming and coming and coming.
Right.
So, the way it worked then was you made an agreement to return every 12 to 18 months max and study for a couple months. And then you paid a fee each time you came back. And it was like I remember people saying, oh, I gotta go re-up my authorization. It was like a renewal, right?
Well, you were out there like making a living sometimes off of it, so it seems
probably not much of one, but yes.
Yeah, but yeah. Was the fee? Did the fee feel like exorbitant or fair?
Well, I'm telling you this because I don't know why I have this, but I have this document in front of me that was probably from around 2007, 2008. So it is not the agreement that I signed. But it has a monetary amount here. I can read you the whole thing if you'd like. It might be boring to people on a podcast. But it's basically authorizations and certifications are the property of K. Patabhi Jois Ashtanga Yoga Institute of Mysore. So this must be after Patabhi Jois passed, because that's when it changed names from Ashtanga Yoga Research Institute to KPJAYI. But it can't be, because it's here. It says you have to pay to Patabhi Jois.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll skip all the banana stuff in the middle. It's pretty straightforward. It's not that much. It's just don't teach teacher trainings. They're the property of the authorizations are the property of the institute. You're required to teach Ashtanga Yoga method as it's taught by the directors of the KPJAYI. And you're required to renew every 18 months by attending for a minimum of 2 months, and provide a fee of 5,618 rupees to Patabhi Jois and Sharath each.
That might not be that much money, though. I don't know how much 5,600 rupees is.
So I did the math today, as of today, because I knew we were going to talk about this, and it's $120 if you did it today.
There's a lot of yoga teachers paying for liability insurance for that much per year, and it's worth nothing.
More than that. Yeah. So between the two fees, so if you have the two, 11,000 rupees, etc. Now it would be about $120. The rupee was around in 2007. I know this because I remember how much crazy things. It was about 43 rupees per dollar. So it was doubled. So even if it was at that point, it was around $250 tops every 18 months to keep up your status.
Right.
And it was both authorized and certified.
And was like somebody checking, like if you didn't re-up, would you get a letter in the mail?
Well, there wasn't that many people. Yeah. So they knew everybody they knew everybody. I mean, they knew. And so when even when I got authorized in 2010, you didn't ask.
You had to wait until
you went and studied. And I can tell you my story if you want.
Yeah. Did you, do you make it known that you would wish to be, or you just wait until he says you can?
So I have no idea I can only tell you my personal experience. Yeah. And my personal experience goes like this. I stood up from a back bend and Sharath's foot was on the end of my mat, and he looked at me and he said, "How many times?" And I thought he was talking about how many back bends had I done. And so I said, "I have 2 more." And he said, "No, how many times coming to Mysore?" And I said, "Oh, this is my 3rd time." And he goes, "Okay, you come see me later in my office. You know what for."
Did you know what he meant?
50%. I was 50% sure that I had been authorized to teach. Yeah. The funny thing about it is I had a really, my practice was very in the zone that day. And I remember before I started my back bends that day going, wow, that was so focused. I wish somebody had witnessed that. And then I stood up and he was on the corner of my mat.
Someone did.
Yeah. And he was always witnessing. I mean, but it was just a funny, when you're in a room with 50 people, you don't imagine that any attention, that you are the focus of attention ever, really, even though you are. And again, I told you before, my practice was pretty tidy. So I didn't get a lot of adjustments or instruction. I had a very strong foundation from Noah and Kimberly.
I mean, when I've talked to some people, though, they would want the next posture. They would want to be moving to second series. Did you have ambition to move on in the series?
Not, I had a really good foundation with Noah and Kimberly, and it was kind of baked in the cake that I didn't really, I think I was already into intermediate by that point, by half intermediate. So that happened to be a primary day. So that was the trip that I got, full.
All right. Well, was there a level to you? Cause I know there's authorized level, different levels of authorization.
Let's go all the way back, and I'll just give a timeline thing. So in the beginning,
go ahead.
In the beginning, it was verbal authorization. Then Tim asked for the certificate. I think he did have to pay a fee because Patabhi Jois jumped through hoops for it. I don't imagine it was very much money. Then there was this, like, you come back every 18 months and you pay this renewal. Around 2009, after Patabhi Jois died, it became the levels system. And then it was, if you were level 1, authorized level 1, you could teach primary series only asanas. And then level 2, you could teach intermediate series asanas. Certified at that point was still what you had learned. So if you had learned third, you could teach third. If you had learned third and 5 poses of fourth, you could teach that. There came a certain point where there was this new certified advanced A, which is sort of what it is now. And I have a feeling that there are a few that have different, I haven't seen their certificates, but I imagine people that were through B probably have one that says advanced B. But I don't know.
I see.
So then at that point, when the level system came on, you paid one fee, you got your paper, and that was it.
There was no re-upping every 18 months.
It was just done. You paid one fee. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that certainly models what happened in the yoga world with teacher training. You didn't have to re-up every year to get your certification at other places,
Yeah. And so you did pay. So I did pay for level 1. And then in 2013, I got authorized to teach full intermediate. I paid a smaller fee. There was a joke. It was called an upgrade. Ha ha ha. Huh. And then there's another fee that happens for certification. So each paper that you got, each level that you got.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.